Chapter 12. Hope Rekindled. Reid's breathing came in ragged gasps as he struggled to steady himself within Fenrir's battered cockpit. Beneath him, the great mech shuddered ominously, its armor plating fractured and control systems flickering from severe internal damage. Warnings flashed continuously across the interface screens, each alert more dire than the last. Reid quickly dismissed them all, knowing he had little choice but to push forward. There was no turning back, no second chance. Ahead, the two corrupted Titanium Ferrum advanced menacingly, their twisted frames radiating dark, malevolent energy. They moved with unsettling grace, circling slowly, carefully evaluating Fenrir's weakened state. Reid clenched his jaw, understanding clearly the enemy's confidence was well justified. In its current state, Fenrir would not withstand a prolonged fight. He quickly focused his thoughts, forcing fatigue and anxiety from his mind. Deep within, he summoned the courage that had brought him this far, focusing on the pressing need to protect those fighting fiercely all around him. He drew strength from every defender risking their life for Veletria's survival, and determination surged powerfully within him. With sudden decisiveness, Reid thrust Fenrir forward, charging directly at the two enemy mechs. Momentarily caught off guard, the corrupted Titanium Ferrum hesitated briefly before quickly regrouping. One surged aggressively forward, its blade shimmering with dark energy as it aimed a ruthless strike toward Fenrir's damaged side. Reid swiftly maneuvered, narrowly evading the deadly blow, feeling the harsh feedback ripple through his controls. Reacting instantly, Reid retaliated with the blazing paladin sword, delivering a swift counterstrike that carved shallowly into the enemy's darkened armor. The corrupted mech reeled momentarily, surprised but not seriously wounded, rapidly recovering and preparing another assault. The second mech simultaneously lunged, attacking Fenrir's opposite flank with ruthless precision. Reid pivoted Fenrir desperately, armor shrieking as it strained under intense movement. He barely managed to block the strike, the harsh impact rattling the cockpit and nearly overwhelming Fenrir's already compromised systems. Sparks erupted fiercely, burning brightly around him as warnings flashed urgently, signaling near-total system overload. Yet, despite the critical condition, Fenrir responded with strained obedience, refusing to falter completely. Sweat streamed down Reid's forehead, his muscles trembling from the immense effort required to keep Fenrir stable. He parried another strike, the enemy's blade sliding dangerously close to Fenrir's cockpit. Reid felt his heart pound furiously, desperation clawing at his focus, but he refused to yield. Every attack required extraordinary concentration. Every evasive maneuver tested the limits of Fenrir's battered frame. The two corrupted Titanium Ferrum continued pressing their advantage, working in sinister, coordinated attacks designed to exploit Fenrir's damaged limbs and compromised mobility. Yet Reid fought on fiercely, utilizing every ounce of piloting skill and determination he possessed. Each second he bought was precious, each defensive stand a chance for Veletria to rally. Fenrir staggered backward under relentless assault, its movements growing dangerously sluggish. Doubt crept slowly into Reid's mind, a cold realization forming at the edge of his consciousness. He simply didn't know how he was going to beat them. Gripping Fenrir's controls tightly, gripping the blazing paladin sword defiantly, bracing himself as the corrupted Titanium Ferrum prepared yet another vicious attack. Aldrich's muscles burned with exertion, his breath coming in sharp, rapid bursts as he swung his blade in sweeping arcs, carving through Imperial ranks with practiced precision. His eyes burned from the mix of blood and exhaustion, every breath scraping against a raw throat. The sounds of clashing metal and roaring voices echoing close by, a constant reminder of the urgency driving him forward. Around him, his loyal knights fought valiantly, their numbers steadily dwindling beneath relentless Imperial pressure. He deflected a savage blow, countering swiftly and felling the attacker in one fluid motion. His gaze snapped up, searching desperately through the battlefield's chaos, his heart pounding fiercely as he strained to spot Althea amid the swarming ranks of Imperial soldiers. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, it couldn't all be for nothing. "Push forward!" Aldrich shouted, his voice fierce and commanding. "Hold formation and do not falter. The princess needs us." His knights, emboldened by his unwavering resolve, surged forward alongside him, a determined wedge carving into the Imperial ranks. Yet the enemy was numerous, organized, and ruthless. Each fallen soldier seemed quickly replaced, their forces endlessly renewed. Aldrich's men battled fiercely, yet exhaustion weighed heavily on them all, their strength waning with every passing moment. Aldrich sensed their growing desperation, the reality of their precarious position settling grimly within him. He couldn't allow himself to dwell on fear or doubt. Althea had placed her trust in him. He would not fail her now. She had stood firm against every threat, every impossible circumstance, always leading by example. Now it was his turn. He spun sharply, driving his sword deep into an Imperial knight who had nearly breached their line. Aldrich caught a brief, determined glance from one of his knights, the young warrior nodding grimly as he steadied himself once more, inspired by Aldrich's resolve. Aldrich felt a surge of pride tempered by a sense of profound urgency. They were so close, and yet every step toward Althea seemed harder than the last. Aldrich's blade flashed again and again, cutting through Imperial armor, leaving behind a trail of fallen foes. Each clash of steel, each deflected strike drew him closer, but at great cost. Beside him, knights fell, their cries ringing sharply in Aldrich's ears, their sacrifices fueling his resolve. His throat tightened, heart aching deeply at each loss, yet he pushed onward relentlessly, refusing to allow their sacrifice to be in vain. Through a gap in the swirling melee, Aldrich finally glimpsed Althea's banner fluttering defiantly. Her forces locked in a desperate struggle against the powerful Imperial paladins. Relief surged briefly within him, swiftly overtaken by urgency. They were still separated by a brutal wall of enemy soldiers. Time was rapidly running out. "With me, Knights of Veletria!" Aldrich roared, rallying the last of his strength, his voice powerful and resolute. "We will not abandon her, not now, not ever." His knights, driven by his fierce determination, surged forward as one, blades raised high, striking fiercely into enemy lines. Aldrich pressed ahead fiercely, driven by sheer willpower, knowing that Althea's survival, and that of Veletria itself, depended desperately on the strength of their charge. Althea's sword flashed in fierce, rapid arcs, deflecting strikes from two Imperial paladins with desperate precision. Their synchronized attacks forced her backward step by punishing step, each parry resonating painfully through her exhausted muscles. Sweat stung her eyes, blurring her vision as she narrowly sidestepped one paladin's blade, only to quickly pivot and deflect the other's strike aimed at her exposed side. The intensity of battling two enemies simultaneously was relentless, the paladin's dark blades humming menacingly, driven by powerful, disciplined movements. Althea's breath came in sharp, shallow gasps, her heart hammering furiously. She could feel fatigue settling deeply into her bones, weakening her limbs. Every defense demanded absolute concentration. Every counterattack taxed her dwindling reserves further. A powerful blow nearly drove her to her knees, darkness-infused steel ringing against her sword, sending sparks cascading like burning embers around her. Gritting her teeth, she managed to steady herself just in time, swiftly rolling to avoid the next sweeping strike from her second opponent. Her quick maneuver placed her briefly behind him. Giving her an opportunity she seized immediately, thrusting her blade forward to land a shallow but satisfying strike upon his armored shoulder. Yet even as she fought fiercely, Althea sensed the desperation of her position. Her knights struggled bravely around her, valiantly attempting to shield their princess from other approaching threats. But their numbers diminished rapidly beneath the Empire's ceaseless assault. The gravity of their situation weighed heavily upon her shoulders. Each loss tore painfully at her heart, each fallen ally reinforcing her sense of responsibility. She fought not just for herself, but for every soul behind Veletria's battered walls. One paladin surged aggressively forward, his dark blade trailing sinister magic as he attacked. She caught his strike inches from her face, arms trembling under the force. At that instant, the second paladin lunged from her blind side, nearly catching her unaware. With desperate agility, Althea twisted aside, the enemy's blade slicing the air where she'd stood moments earlier, narrowly avoiding lethal injury. Her vision blurred briefly from exertion, chest tightening painfully as exhaustion clawed at her remaining strength. The thought of Aldrich flashed through her mind. Had he reached her yet? Was he even still alive? The uncertainty threatened to weaken her resolve, but she swiftly pushed it aside, drawing courage from her sense of duty. her vow to protect the people who trusted her implicitly. With a defiant shout, Althea drove forward once more, her blade moving with newfound ferocity born of sheer desperation. She attacked swiftly and decisively, briefly forcing both paladins into defensive postures. But the advantage proved fleeting. Their coordinated counterattack soon forced her into retreat again, pushing her toward the limits of her endurance. Panting heavily, Althea raised her blade defiantly, her stance wavering only slightly. She faced the advancing paladins unflinchingly, determined to fight until her last breath, despite the dreadful uncertainty of how much longer she could withstand their brutal, coordinated assault. With a fierce cry, Aldrich surged forward, swinging his blade in a powerful sweeping arc that cleared a narrow path through the enemy lines. His knights, sensing the renewed urgency, charged close behind him, armor dented and blades chipped from relentless fighting. The Imperial ranks buckled under the sudden intensity of their assault, soldiers scattering in disarray, momentarily unable to respond effectively to the disciplined fury of Aldrich's charge. Blood pounded furiously in Aldrich's ears as adrenaline fueled his limbs. Every swing, every step brought him closer to Althea, whose figure he finally glimpsed clearly through the chaotic swirl of battle. His heart surged powerfully at the sight. She still fought fiercely, yet he could see her strength waning, forced backward by two relentless paladin knights. Summoning every last reserve of strength, Aldrich burst through the enemy line, his blade flashing rapidly as he cut down foes with swift efficiency. He reached Althea's position just as one paladin prepared a devastating strike aimed at her exposed flank. Aldrich intercepted the blow mid-swing, his blade clashing violently against the enemy's dark sword, sending sparks flying. Althea turned sharply at the sound, eyes widening briefly in relief as she recognized Aldrich's determined face. For an instant their eyes met, conveying silently the depth of their shared struggle and determination. No words were necessary. Their mutual understanding was immediate and powerful. "Princess, we stand with you!" Aldrich shouted over the clash of blades, his voice resonating with authority and fierce devotion. "Hold firm! We shall not break!" His words electrified the weary knights around them, visibly rekindling their morale. With renewed vigor, they surged forward, forming a protective barrier around their princess. Althea steadied herself, drawing strength from Aldrich's arrival, regaining the composure and clarity momentarily stolen by exhaustion. Aldrich took immediate command of the rapidly reforming defensive line, his decisive orders cutting through the battlefield chaos with powerful clarity. "Form ranks! Shields forward! Do not allow them a single inch!" The knights responded swiftly, their discipline quickly restoring stability to the faltering defensive position. Aldrich remained firmly by Althea's side, their blades weaving a protective barrier of steel, each strike precise and coordinated. They moved instinctively together, reinforcing each other's defenses, seamlessly countering the paladins' coordinated strikes. Though enemy forces pressed fiercely, Aldrich's unyielding presence proved transformative. Knights who moments earlier were nearing collapse now fought with fresh courage, inspired by their leader's determination and the reunion with their princess. Slowly, the Imperial advance began to falter, disrupted by Aldrich's well-timed intervention. Aldrich's muscles burned with exhaustion, yet his resolve never wavered. He knew clearly this reprieve was fleeting, that their enemies would swiftly regroup and renew their assault. Still, for this crucial moment their line held firm and morale surging visibly around him. He glanced once more at Althea, who fought fiercely at his side, her eyes fierce yet deeply grateful. In that instant, Aldrich silently vowed once more to protect her and their city, determined to withstand whatever the Empire unleashed upon them next. From their disciplined formation near the rear lines, the battle mages observed Aldrich's dramatic reunion with Princess Althea, a moment that surged powerfully through their spirits, emboldening their hearts. Commander Thane, sensing the critical opportunity, swiftly raised his staff, his voice cutting sharply through the chaos. "Mages forward! Protect our princess! Strike decisively!" Immediately, the battle mages moved forward in perfect unity, their boots pounding rhythmically across the bloodied ground. Each step reinforced their resolve, channeling arcane energies into spells primed to unleash devastating fury. Knights hurriedly formed protective ranks around them, shields locked tight, forming an armored wall to shield their advance from enemy archers and infantry. Ahead, One of the Imperial Paladin Knights turned, his dark armor crackling menacingly, sensing the approaching threat. The mages felt a chill ripple through the air as the Paladin raised his dark blade, pulsing with sinister power. But they did not falter. Each mage had trained relentlessly for precisely this moment, their collective courage forged through countless hours of preparation and discipline. With a precise gesture from Thane, spells burst forth in dazzling arcs of vibrant energy, converging rapidly upon the formidable enemy. Flame, lightning, and focused beams of intense magical force slammed into the Paladin Knight simultaneously, enveloping him in brilliant explosions of light and sound. Yet even beneath their concentrated assault, the Paladin Knight stood resilient. His dark energy flared defensively, deflecting several spells, his figure shadowy and terrifying within the storm of unleashed magic. He stepped forward menacingly, weapon raised high, attempting to close the distance and break their formation. Undeterred, the mages rapidly shifted their tactics, seamlessly adapting their spells in response to Thane's shouted orders. Powerful binding runes materialized swiftly beneath the Paladin's feet, glowing fiercely as they anchored him momentarily, restraining his advance. Simultaneously, a wave of arcane frost enveloped him, slowing his movements dramatically. The Paladin struggled fiercely, dark energy roaring around him, attempting to break free from the magical restraints. The battle mages maintained perfect composure, their ranks disciplined and focused, casting in swift rotation to ensure constant magical pressure. Sweat trickled down their faces, the strain of channeling such potent energy evident in their narrowed eyes and clenched jaws, yet none faltered. Thane stepped forward boldly, channeling a spell of brilliant, blinding intensity. Arcane light exploded from his staff, cascading over the Paladin Knight like molten sunlight, eroding the enemy's dark defenses. The knight staggered visibly beneath the relentless magical assault, dark armor sizzling, corrupted energy visibly destabilizing. The battle mages swiftly intensified their spells, sensing victory within their grasp. Each mage's contribution was crucial, their combined effort expertly coordinated, amplifying their collective strength far beyond the sum of its parts. Arcane energy surged powerfully around them, dazzling streams of magic flowing seamlessly together, each spell carefully synchronized and perfectly timed. The Paladin, surrounded and increasingly overwhelmed, roared furiously, his dark defenses flickering weakly, unable to withstand the relentless magical storm. Still, the battle mages pressed onward with disciplined determination. Together they advanced cautiously yet confidently, their combined magic forcing the Paladin Knight slowly backward, inch by grueling inch. Victory was close, yet each mage knew the smallest mistake could still bring devastating defeat. Aldrich's sword flashed continuously, a deadly blur of steel that met enemy blades with decisive precision, deflecting attacks aimed at the battle mages positioned carefully behind him. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes, yet he dared not wipe it away. There was no time for distraction. Each second required absolute vigilance. Around him, knights stood shoulder to shoulder, their shields locked tight, bodies strained from relentless defense. Enemy soldiers pressed mercilessly forward, determined to reach the mages whose potent spells now devastated the Imperial Paladin. Aldrich's mind raced with tactical calculations, acutely aware of both their strengths and vulnerabilities. Their position was solid yet dangerously exposed. Even a momentary breach could unravel their carefully maintained formation. Aldrich glimpsed Commander Thane, resolutely directing the mages, spells erupting from their tightly grouped ranks with perfect, disciplined unity. Arcane fire and ice illuminated the battlefield brilliantly, surging past Aldrich's defensive line to batter the Paladin Knight. Aldrich admired their courage deeply, knowing they risked everything, exposed yet determined to fulfill their critical role. Their courage lent renewed strength to his own weary muscles, reminding him vividly why every sacrifice mattered. "To your left!" Aldrich shouted suddenly, intercepting an enemy soldier lunging toward a young knight. His swift parry diverted the attack, followed immediately by a powerful counterstrike that felled the Imperial warrior instantly. The knight nodded breathlessly in gratitude, quickly regaining composure and position. "Hold fast!" Aldrich commanded fiercely, voice cutting powerfully through the chaos, urging his knights forward. He stood firmly at the formation's heart, a solid and reassuring presence amid the brutal melee. Each swing of his sword, Each deflected blow carried the weight of responsibility. He knew clearly that their survival hinged on protecting the vulnerable mages behind them. He spotted weaknesses appearing briefly in enemy ranks, their assault faltering beneath the relentless magical onslaught. Yet, despite their successful defense, Aldrich felt the brutal toll of prolonged combat. His limbs ached fiercely, his breathing ragged and shallow. Knights around him stumbled and recovered, visibly pushed beyond exhaustion but still holding their ground. He forced fatigue away, gritting his teeth, adjusting position to intercept another fierce assault, his blade ringing sharply. Aldrich refused to yield an inch, his resolve unwavering, his determination unbreakable. Drawing strength from their valor, Aldrich surged forward again, roaring defiance, determined to hold the line no matter the cost. Reid's vision blurred as exhaustion pressed heavily upon him, each breath labored and sharp. He felt Fenrir shudder beneath him, armor plates groaning, metal joints trembling under the constant barrage from the corrupted Titanum Ferrum. His limbs burned with fatigue, every movement a struggle, every moment closer to complete collapse. Suddenly a rush of clarity surged through Reid, a sensation unlike anything he'd ever experienced. His heartbeat steadied, slowing remarkably, each powerful pulse echoing distinctly in his ears. The cacophony of the battlefield faded into a muted background hum. Colors sharpened vividly, and movements around him began to crawl with surreal slowness. He glanced at the paladin's sword clenched tightly in Fenrir's hand, its blade glowing brighter than ever, pulsating with a rhythm perfectly synchronized to his slowed heartbeat. Fenrir's controls felt suddenly effortless, each touch instinctual, natural, as though he and the mech were no longer separate entities, but extensions of one singular consciousness. In that moment, Reid understood with profound certainty that he, Fenrir, and the sword had somehow merged together, forming an unbreakable bond. Ahead, the corrupted Titanum Ferrum swung their dark blades, their movements achingly slow within Reid's heightened perception. He reacted instinctively, guiding Fenrir forward fluidly, the enormous mech responding with flawless precision, graceful despite its damage. Reid could feel every component, every internal mechanism within Fenrir, perfectly attuned to his intentions. He struck decisively, the paladin's sword carving through the first corrupted mech's armor as if it were mere parchment. The enemy machine buckled silently in Reid's slowed reality, dark energy dissipating gradually as it crumpled. Reid pivoted smoothly, directing Fenrir with perfect confidence toward the second Titanum Ferrum, which had barely registered the defeat of its companion. Reid's senses remained impossibly sharp, his awareness of the battlefield absolute. He anticipated each enemy motion effortlessly, countering attacks before they fully formed. As the second corrupted mech began its lumbering counterstrike, Reid calmly guided Fenrir into a sweeping maneuver, sidestepping its attack with ease. He reversed Fenrir's blade in a fluid arc, cleaving through the mech's midsection with devastating precision. As both corrupted mechs collapsed, dark energy dispersing in slow motion, Reid felt reality begin to accelerate once more, sensations rushing back to full speed. The clarity receded rapidly, replaced by overwhelming pain and exhaustion, flooding through him with unrelenting force. He gasped sharply, hands trembling uncontrollably on Fenrir's controls as the connection weakened. Fenrir staggered, nearly toppling forward, systems blinking erratically as the mech strained to remain standing. Reid struggled fiercely, desperately fighting to maintain control, yet his strength rapidly faded. He slumped heavily in his seat, body nearly unresponsive, the toll of tapping such power beyond anything he'd anticipated. Panting and dazed, Reid glanced out over the battlefield, now once more filled with chaos and noise. Through blurred vision, he could see Veletria's defenders continuing their struggle, courageously battling despite desperate odds. He had bought them critical time, though at an immense cost, one he knew he might never fully recover from. As his eyes drifted shut, the felt Fenrir collapsed beneath him. Althea felt a sudden rush of clarity as the chaos surrounding her faded into a slow, silent calm. Her heartbeats grew long and steady, her breathing relaxed, and the frenetic movements of the battlefield slowed to an elegant, dreamlike pace. She recognized this profound state instantly, having felt it only once before, years ago during her first true battle. This clarity, this focused serenity had saved her then, and she knew intuitively it would guide her again now. Ahead, the battle mages had completely ensnared one of the Imperial Paladins, their magic weaving an intricate web of ice, fire, and shimmering arcane barriers. The enemy knight fought desperately against the brilliant onslaught, yet each strike was swallowed by layered magical defenses. Althea marveled briefly at the disciplined teamwork, her admiration mingling with renewed resolve as she turned her attention to her own adversary, the second paladin who now bore down upon her with merciless intent. As the paladin's dark blade descended in slow motion, Althea moved fluidly, effortlessly stepping aside and letting it cut harmlessly through the empty space where she'd stood. She countered swiftly, her sword arcing upward, ringing sharply against the enemy's armor. Her movements were precise, confident, each strike calculated to exploit the smallest gaps in the paladin's formidable defenses. She sensed every shift in his stance, anticipated each subtle motion before it fully occurred. Their blades clashed in an intricate dance, Althea's sword moving gracefully, as if guided by an invisible force. Even as the paladin's strikes increased in desperation and intensity, she maintained her calm, exploiting every small misstep her enemy made. Simultaneously, Commander Thane and his mages flawlessly executed their coordinated assault against the other Imperial Paladin. Each spell was timed to perfection, layered to overwhelm the enemy's defenses with relentless pressure. Thane swiftly adapted their magical tactics, shifting from offensive attacks to carefully placed barriers and strategic immobilization spells that held their powerful foe trapped and increasingly vulnerable. Aldrich and his knights formed an unbreakable shield wall, expertly intercepting enemy infantry, attempting to breach their protective line. Thane was grateful for their unwavering support, knowing clearly their success depended upon the knights' steadfast defense. He raised his staff high, directing another wave of intense magical fire, overwhelming the paladin knight further, steadily eroding his dark energies. Nearby, Althea's perception of time remained slowed, each heartbeat echoing through her body. She moved forward decisively, her sword weaving through the paladin's guard. His armor parted beneath the force of her strike, her blade sinking deep into his shoulder. The paladin reeled backward, stumbling, his dark sword wavering uncertainly. Althea pressed forward without hesitation, her blade a fluid extension of her will. She reflected briefly on the immense stakes, aware this battle would determine Veletria's survival. Responsibility, duty, and love for her people fueled each strike. Gathering strength from deep within herself, she thrust forward fiercely, her blade piercing the paladin's chest armor. Dark energy erupted violently around him, shuddering, weakening, then dissolving entirely as the paladin collapsed heavily to the ground. At nearly the same moment, Commander Thane seized his opportunity. His voice rang clear, commanding his mages into their final decisive attack. Unified spells converged into a focused surge of blinding white flame, completely enveloping the remaining paladin knight. The enemy struggled futilely, his dark armor melting away beneath the overwhelming magical force, leaving nothing but scorched, empty armor collapsing to the bloodied earth. Thane's mages stood firm, all of them breathing heavily, exhaustion evident yet their spirits unbroken. He knew that eliminating these paladin knights would shatter the enemy's immediate strength, significantly shifting the balance in Veletria's favor. As the intense clarity began fading, Althea felt time rush back around her, noise and chaos returning full force. Her limbs trembled slightly from exhaustion, yet she stood resolutely, sword held high. Around her, knights cheered triumphantly, their morale instantly bolstered by the defeat of the formidable Imperial champions. Althea met Thane's eyes across the battlefield, silently acknowledging the shared victory, mutual respect clear between them. She stood, chest heaving and sword gripped tightly, surveying the battlefield around her. The thunderous sound of clashing weapons echoed relentlessly, yet now she sensed a crucial shift, a sudden weakening in the enemy's resolve. Her breath caught sharply, fresh recognition and gratitude surging powerfully through her. The reinforcements from Mornmaw Gate and Affenbarrow were pressing their advantage with impressive resolve, systematically dismantling the Empire's offensive lines, driving the enemy back step by determined step. Her heart lifted with renewed hope, fatigue momentarily forgotten as she watched the northern forces fight skillfully, their fierce determination unmistakable even from a distance. Yet as relief flooded her, her eyes suddenly fell upon a heartbreaking sight. Fenrir lay motionless amidst shattered armor and twisted metal, its massive frame slumped unmoving. Two corrupted Titanum Ferrum lay in broken heaps around him, defeated, lifeless husks. Fear gripped her instantly, her heart tightening painfully as she searched desperately for signs of life within the fallen mech. From across the battlefield, Valen too had noticed Fenrir's slumped and battered form. His pulse quickened with anxiety, a sudden wave of fear washing over him as he sprinted forward through the turmoil. Around him, shouts and clashing steel seemed distant, his singular focus on reaching Reid, on ensuring the man who had given so much remained alive. Valen's footsteps echoed heavily in his ears as he navigated through scattered wreckage, his breath ragged, urgency driving him relentlessly onward. As he reached Fenrir's shattered frame, he saw sparks cascading from exposed cables and joints. He swiftly clambered upward, hands shaking slightly as he pried open the damaged cockpit hatch. Inside, Reid sat slumped forward, face pale, eyes closed, breathing shallowly but steadily. Relief flooded Valen powerfully, emotions surging through him at the realization that Reid still lived. Carefully, Valen grasped his shoulder, gently pulling Reid upright. Reid's eyes flickered open weakly, meeting Valen's with weary recognition. Valen felt immense pride and gratitude for the man whose bravery had become symbolic of their city's resilience. "You did it," Valen said softly, emotion thickening his voice, gripping Reid's shoulder firmly in admiration. Reid managed a faint, exhausted smile in reply, strength barely enough to nod weakly before his eyes drifted closed again. Valen breathed deeply, steadying himself, moved by Reid's courage and sacrifice. Althea watched as the northern forces swept rapidly closer, their powerful charge scattering Imperial troops. Enemy lines wavered, formations splintering beneath the disciplined fury of these reinforcements. Althea's knights, sensing the shift, rallied once more, pressing forward decisively, reclaiming ground previously lost in brutal combat. Morale surged visibly across Veletria's defenders, their renewed energy surging like wildfire through battered ranks. The northern cavalry crashed decisively into the last remaining enemy positions, as Althea's soldiers cheered in relief. Althea stepped forward, rallying knights around her as she lifted her sword high, directing them into a swift, coordinated advance to join with the northern army, now fighting boldly beside them. Imperial forces stumbled backward in disarray, their confidence shattered by this unexpected and relentless assault. Horns sounded sharply from their rear, signaling frantic orders to retreat. Their lines quickly deteriorated, soldiers fleeing chaotically as northern cavalry chased them down, methodically routing enemy remnants. As the northern commander finally reached Althea, dismounting swiftly, he bowed deeply in respect, his expression fierce yet reverent. "Princess Althea, we stand with you," he declared, sincerity ringing clearly in his voice. Emotion surged deeply through Althea, gratitude mingling with exhaustion as she nodded solemnly, acknowledging his loyalty and courage. She glanced again toward Fenrir, her heart tightening once more at the sight of Valen helping Reid from the battered cockpit. She could see the heavy toll this victory had exacted upon Reid, upon Fenrir, and upon all who fought fiercely for Veletria's survival. Yet despite the exhaustion, pain, and loss, she knew with certainty they had achieved something remarkable. For now, Veletria stood unbroken, its defenders unified by courage, sacrifice, and hope. The battlefield had finally grown quiet, the distant echoes of conflict now replaced by the low murmurs of exhausted warriors and the gentle rustling of banners caught in the evening breeze. Fenrir sat motionless, a proud but wounded titan amidst the fallen enemies and scattered weapons, its massive frame bearing deep scars from the brutal fight. Perched atop the mech, Reid sat quietly, shoulders slumped in profound exhaustion. Every muscle ached, his body drained beyond measure. His thoughts drifted, moving between painful recollections of battle and the strange yet beautiful stillness he'd experienced in the midst of chaos. His eyes lifted slowly as he heard footsteps approaching. A weary but grateful smile crossed his lips as he saw Althea climbing carefully toward him. Without speaking, she settled herself quietly next to him, her armor scuffed and battered, the stains of battle visible but unable to diminish her quiet dignity. They sat together silently for several moments, both gazing out over the now peaceful battlefield. In that shared silence, Unspoken gratitude and mutual respect passed clearly between them, each fully aware of the sacrifices and strength the other had displayed. Finally, Althea turned slightly toward Reid, her voice quiet yet steady, filled with quiet admiration. "What you did out there, Reid, it's something I've only seen once before. Very few experience it, fewer still ever understand or control it." Reid met her eyes, curiosity mixing with his exhaustion. "What exactly is it?" She paused briefly, her gaze distant yet thoughtful. "In ancient texts, it is called Tempus Luminis, light of time. It is a rare, powerful connection between spirit, magic, and purpose. When it happens, time itself seems to slow, revealing possibilities unseen, movements unnoticed. It binds the warrior with everything around them, creating clarity amidst chaos." He took a slow, deep breath, absorbing her words carefully. The name resonated deeply within him, capturing exactly the extraordinary moment he had experienced. "Tempus Luminis," he repeated softly, testing the phrase on his tongue. He glanced toward Althea, a profound understanding settling between them. "You felt it too?" She nodded slowly, a gentle, knowing smile forming. "Yes, a long time ago in my first true battle. It changed me, Reid. It made me realize that our roles, yours and mine, are not merely duty, but destiny." He let the weight of her words settle over him. The revelation of this shared experience created a bond he had not fully expected, a connection deeper than friendship, deeper even than comradeship. Reid's heart felt lighter, his sense of purpose renewed even as his body ached profoundly. "Destiny," he echoed quietly, turning the word thoughtfully in his mind. "I think I understand now." Althea gently placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch firm and reassuring. "You were remarkable today. You've given all of us a new chance, a fresh hope. Whatever comes next, we face it together." He nodded silently, drawing quiet strength from her presence. They remained seated together, sharing this brief yet meaningful respite. Two warriors bound by sacrifice, courage, and now something far deeper. Tempus Luminis had forged a powerful connection between them, one they both recognized and welcomed fully, knowing it would guide them in battles yet to come.